all gene-based vaccines, independent of manufacturers, produce the same result in the vaccinees. He has looked at 15. In the last 4 days, the number has been increased to 70 individuals who died after vaccination. These were people who died at home, at work, in the car, doing their sports, etc., etc., etc. There's no question now anymore about what is going on. And the answer is in the organs of these people. In 90%, he found clear evidence for autoimmune self-attack by killer lymphocytes on the.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Saturday, May 31st, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Obviously, some major developments all across the news today regarding Palantir. Really difficult to not just start screaming, "I told you so" today for a lot of us, and having this conversation for, I don't know, a decade, if not longer. And I mean that legitimately, going back to the conversation of, if you even go even further, if you understand the idea of total information awareness and Whitney's discussions around that for a very long time that became Palantir. So if you don't understand that point, we're not going to really fixate on that today, but understanding that Palantir, the same way we talk about XAI as the DARPA program becoming XAI as Elon's program, the US government put out something called Total Information Awareness. Just type it in. It's actually very easy to search. The weird logo will probably make you feel like it's fake, but it's definitely real. And the name explains it. Total Information Awareness of all different types, not just, video, not just audio, every single thing they could possibly collect. That got pushed back on aggressively by most people in this country. So they did what they usually do. And they go, "Oh, okay, we won't do that," except they were planning either on doing that the entire time, or usually when you push back, they just find another avenue. A lot of us tend to think that it's sort of a putting out the most, bombastic version. So you are okay with something that's a little bit less, but what they always wanted. Something to consider. Bottom line is Palantir is what that became. Even the original funding, even coming from In-Q-Tel, the CIA is, and for a long time, their only contractor. And now the way it's developing today, if you haven't been following our work, the Last American Vagabond at large, all the people involved with the Last American Vagabond, including, not every one of them, but specifically Whitney and Derek and myself, or Unlimited Hangout and Whitney's work going back a long way when that started, before that TLAV, before that Min-Press News. Derek's work going back a very long way on the very conversation. Most people in the IMA calling this out for a very long time. The interesting thing around the being called black pilled for saying that the two chosen selections for the election process was, not what we should be leaning into. This was a major part of what we were calling out. So that's the most I'm going to do in regard to "I told you so," but it's important to recognize that, if you actually start with the point of talking about demonstrating our value for this platform to show you how much work we've done on this in particular. And a few things I want to start with in general, actually, but I think outlining the show in general today, we're going to talk about Palantir, an important overlap, really the surveillance AI, great reset kind of technocracy, all the different converging ideas, whatever you think of those words, we can see the implementation of a lot of this. And so that's the main arching point. But we're going to talk about, to start, health and how important this is, and interestingly timed, an incredible story that we're going to discuss, which actually came out. The date of the article was, technically that came out today. I thought this was something that came. So the FDA has approved a shot we're going to discuss that I think it was approved not today, yesterday or the day before, but an approved mRNA COVID shot. After everything we just discussed, after everything RFK just said, on top of that, we'll get into the idea of whether a placebo was even used. Now, there's a difference of whether you need to use a placebo for certain kinds of procedures or certain kinds of trials. But we'd all like to believe that at least one part of this process, there would have been a placebo used. Turns out it wasn't. And we'll go over what that means and why that's contradictory, and incredibly showing you how they're using a previous mRNA shot to compare the new one to, which is exactly what we talked about during this. And I don't care what process we're discussing, whether it's even to see if it's more efficacious. The bottom line is you're comparing it to something that we know is deadly. We shouldn't be pulling away from acknowledging that very obvious, undeniable point. Weirdly enough, that RFK Jr. would have told you the same so many months ago. But we're going to go over how that relates, but then overlap that with why that's a problem with the artificial intelligence and how that dovetails with Palantir, Doge, all the things we're discussing today. And really, what we have been saying for a really long time, that this has been collecting into one massive database. Whether it's the immigration justification or any number of things we've discussed. Sadly enough, this is one of those moments where you just hate being right. This is exactly what we are worried about. Now, let's be clear. That's why I titled it new with the quotes. Just because New York Times or others are pointing to this does not make this new. The problem is that it seems clearly that the shift is legitimate and not just what we seem to be reading along, piecing things together. And it's not, again, not just because they wrote that, but because of the pieces that you can see in place. And so it's important to lay this out for everybody who a lot right now are simply going, oh, the New York Times, I can't believe you fell for that. That's the kind of ignorance we see from the partisanship. Where, yes, New York Times lies all the time. So does left and right media on every angle. But that doesn't mean you should reflexively ignore it as if it, usually that happens when it's something that you don't want to agree with. So you go, well, it's that partisan side. Yeah, they could be lying, but they also could be using the truth in other manipulative ways, which would still make it the truth. We'll talk about all of that. Before we get into it, I wanted to highlight one thing I thought was really, really cool. Somebody sent me this. This is what's sitting right here with me. Shout out to Eric who sent me this, and it simply says, thanks, Ryan, for everything you do for others. It existed. And includes, you can't see it from this far away, but here's the picture for you. Look closely at that. Oh, I guess I can't zoom in the way this is on there. Here, let me do this. This will make it easier to zoom in on it. Just put it on the browser so you guys can actually see it. So you can see what it says, because that's the important part. Really means a lot to me, like more than you could possibly know. Here is the shot of it. And if you zoom in real close, and you guys have seen these, I'm actually pretty elated to actually have this in my hand. I actually don't know how rare these are. I imagine this is pretty rare, but it simply says Palestine, 1927. And as he says, it existed. We all know that. You know that. Anybody honest out there knows that, but it's still very, very cool for him to send that to me. And I just want to give a shout out to all of you out there who send us things, and we do our best to get back to every single one with handwritten we can. Some things fall through the cracks. I wonder how many I don't even get these days. And in general, emails and other notes, I guarantee we don't get back to everybody, but I hope you all know how much it means to me and everybody else involved, more than you could possibly know. And that is special to me. So thank you, Eric, and whoever else is out there sending us stuff and commenting, or even just sending us positive energy. Definitely need it today. Now, let's go into a couple of quick starting points I wanted to highlight before we get started with the health overlap and shouting to a recent restreamed interview we just put out. First, I wanted to make sure you saw this. Odyssey put this out, and this is important. Okay, this is what we've been telling you has been coming. There's been some hitches in the process, like we said, is pretty much customary, or that's what you expect when you're going through something new like this. As they build out these new portals, they're calling it, from the decentralized internet, kind of leading the charge when it comes to the uncensorable content today. And the Independent Media Alliance, they reached out to us when we first started this, and they wanted that to be sort of the flagship version of this portal. So we're honored to be a part of that. And so you can read through this for yourself. It simply says, led by Whitney Webb, Derek Brose, and Ryan Cristian, the Independent Media Alliance will pioneer Odyssey's revolutionary portal technology in the emerging decentralized media ecosystem. The link here is to the TLAV page that shows you our kind of press release. But this is on Business Wire. It's pretty, you just got to think about how interesting this is, that as much as people try to relegate us to some kind of fringe side, the Last American Vagabond, or just our ecosystem, or just Independent Media Alliance is probably the best way to look at it now, because not every part of this is tied into TLAV, as much as that I'm hoping that doesn't seem that way, because we're using the platform to broadcast right now just out of default. But it's important to see that as the Independent Media Alliance, a lot of us get kind of pushed aside as somehow not relevant, but you realize what a big deal this is. And the fact that this is being put out as a massive press release from one of the most primary platforms and pointing to what we're doing as the central part of that, I guarantee you that frustrates a lot of people who like to pretend like we are not as influential as we are. So that's a shout out to all of you out there and everyone supporting us and everything that we're doing. You're making waves, guys. Just recognize that. It's powerful. Now, what we're going to highlight today, just to make sure you see it right out of the gate, is an important conversation. And we're going to come back to this right away after the health point, but I just wanted it to be early and seen. This is the article that's being discussed. New York Times, Trump taps Palantir to compile data on Americans. And this is from the 30th. It's yesterday. But what's interesting about it is the question should be asked, why is the New York Times suddenly reporting on this? This has gone back way before Donald Trump. I mean, to the degree we're seeing it today, it's all really falling into place. And they've been given, really what it is, it's the overlap with the AI push, what Doge was doing, which is the same thing as far as I'm concerned, and I'll make that case as we go through here. And then Palantir and the scooping up of that data and applying it to what they're doing, as well as the overseas genocide and everything else happening, which they're involved with. It's simply important to see how that is what really changes this scene. But Palantir has been doing what they've been doing for a long time and even overlapped with the U.S. government for a long time. Very important to understand that. That's why for those of us that are aware of the two-party illusion, it's important to see that this continues from administration to administration. All of the presidents and everybody else around them involved in their own way, usually profiting off the process. And that's happening right now as well. Homan and others, profiting off of the prison system in regard to the immigration dynamic, which is all run by, we'll get into all of this. Important to understand this, but that's the article we're going to read through. But again, to demonstrate our value, recognize how long we have been screaming about this. This goes back to Palantir in regard to I forgot the other one too, around COVID-19, where Palantir was tapped during COVID-19 in the same ways. This is from 2018, Whitney Webb. Palantir, the PayPal offshoot, becomes a weapon in the war against whistleblowers and WikiLeaks. You see, this is not a new conversation. That's really important to understand why and how much this ties into a larger building technocratic agenda. This is important to see. We talked about this, the 13th, 2024, Palantir joins Gaza genocide. We'll talk about that as we go through. This one is 2024, October, and Derek writing about the upcoming selection. So think about all this building, right? Election 2024, Zionist technocrats versus Zionist technocrats. Had you been reading this and aware, you might have been much more aware of what was going on if you are just finding out about a lot of this stuff. And look, TLAV was not even remotely the only platform making these cases. But realize how it's interesting to see the difference. Most partisans are even being forced to acknowledge this kind of conversation now, now that it's too late for that to affect the actual process of the selection. Meet Peter Thiel's acolytes in Donald Trump's second administration. This was February 2025. Derek Brose has been breaking this down quite a lot, going over the different people that are basically, like he writes, Thiel acolytes that have been put into Trump's administration. He points over to the man whose philosophy is guiding all of it, it seems. And this was specifically, I'm blanking on his name. I don't want to look down, trying to remember, Curtis Yarvin. Meet the man whose philosophy has influenced Peter Thiel and his technocrats. That's this man right here. And this is that whole, we've talked about this, the Andreessen point and the good elitists saving you from the other elitists. That's the mindset they have. Really had made the point in the Joe Rogan show that oligarchy is what's going to save you from oligarchy. It's wild. It's wild what's happening. And they're really trying to train everybody. 2025 March, Donald Trump, Peter Thiel, and the technocrats. Does a great job breaking all this down. And then I did a show called The Great Palantir Reset, April 21st, 2025, talking about this exact conversation, like literally this conversation on the building off the immigration and how that was being built using that argument. Derek and I had talks about this before Trump got elected in the conversation about how Palantir and the immigration discussion would be used exactly this way. Zoe Smith and I talked April 23rd, and this title, the interview was entitled COVID Surveillance, Palantir, and the Transition to Total Information Awareness, all of exactly what's happening right now. This was me and Seven Seas and myself discussing the interview entitled The Palantir Control Structure and the Globalist Endgame, April 29th. Then Derek put the article out April 24th, right before this. Welcome to the Palantir World Order. And damn well outlines exactly what we're going to discuss today, what's going on in general, what people are only now kind of waking up to. And here is a tag for this, the Palantir conversation, all of which, any show in here we discuss Palantir, it was tagged, will be included. So we'll come back to this briefly. Let me go over some points that really, so this point forward is kind of where I want you to build this overarching point. So you have the health discussion and how that overlaps. And I'm going to go over kind of the building quickly time frame of Twitter election, or rather Twitter and Trump election, and then the building of that AI direction going through X and XAI and all these overlaps until we come into the point we're at now. So first, I want to make sure you didn't miss that we re-streamed the interview that Taylor did that was amazing. And this is if of all that we've done on this platform, I am the most proud of this piece of work, which is Taylor's outstanding work, and all the credit goes to her. Now, TLAV funded this entire thing, and so it's important for me that this gets as much reach as possible because she put so much into this, so much work and effort and time. And of course, because it's us, because it's what we're doing, it gets suppressed, it gets stepped on. Can you only imagine if any one of a number of people simply pointed to this? Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, simply just barely pointed to this interview. It would be the most, this is, if you haven't seen this, it's entitled Pathologist Arne Burkhardt Final Interview, Revealing the Grave Dangers of mRNA Vaccines. It is profound. It is science-based. He is one of the, before he passed away, suspiciously, in my opinion, one of the leading pathologists in the world. And he came out of retirement to investigate this and broke it down in real time through this entire interview and proved what we already know today. I'm just saying it's a really important interview. And the reason we shared it again yesterday was because that was the anniversary, when he passed away. And so it's important to, or excuse me, when they did the interview. So it's important to remember that. But really important discussion because this overlaps with where we're going. The artificial intelligence direction, the biometric, the technocratic direction through health, but understanding that they've already, we know what's going on. We know how dangerous this is. So that's important to understand as we go into the next shot conversation. Weirdly enough, by the way, not that I'm going to say that I will tell you this is what happened. Frankly, I find it hard to believe, even though we do have influence, I think. Weirdly enough, right when we started this interview, literally right when we started it and pretty much right when it ended, Twitter had a random outage. Exactly right at that moment, though. And then it stopped. It's ridiculous. I mean, you can look for yourself. The timing is almost exact and ends almost right when we're done. To a T, maybe like 5-minute difference. That's the only time I've had an outage the entire time. So I just find that very telling. If you understand how important this is to a larger agenda, maybe that does make sense. I don't know. I can't prove that. Find it interesting. And I also put it out on Substack for that very reason, because we know it'll get suppressed. Check it out, please. Help it get reach. It is one of the most important interviews regarding in the context of the COVID-19 conversation. And by the way, that's not just my opinion. Watch it for yourself. I've never met a person who hasn't watched this and went like, that is the most important interview in this conversation. But yet, you know why it gets suppressed. Now, one thing I want to show you on health before we go through some of this, because I just wanted you guys to see this, and I want to hopefully motivate some of you to get out there and do these kind of things for yourselves, to break away from the controlled health sickness system that we're in. I've really been trying to put my money where my mouth is when it comes to gardening and all that we talk about, guys. And so that's one of the reasons why we moved further away and got more land. And so I wanted to quickly play these for you so you can see what we've been doing in the background. This is just my personal, there's multiple parts to this. So that's my little jalapeno tree we planted. That's eucalyptus, a couple of things, chives, cilantro, that's growing some small ones. So some peppers there. That's a random flower that I'm growing. But then you got, different, that's heart scents. There's a butternut squash growing. Here you got fennel, a big fennel bush. There's 2 things of broccoli growing right there. That's a pineapple, if you can believe that. Some beans. Doing pretty well, actually. A lot of them we've already gotten a pretty good haul off of it. There's some tarragon. There's some regular tomatoes. Next to it is, I forget the name of it. It's in this plant was meant, it really works too. You plant it and the moles actually stop coming around because they don't like the smell or something. That, and then just, you can see a bunch of cilantro and a bunch of basil. And I'm proud of this, and it's a small thing. I mean, this is just my beginning effort, and there's more than this as well. Here, we just a couple more things. There's some lavender, and we got a bunch of lettuce and different things growing. And then this one is the larger kind of out in the middle spot where we've just got a bunch more. There's, some peppers there, some more tomatoes. This one is a bunch of, there's some onions, some more radish right there. That's a eggplant. And then just a whole bunch of lettuce. Now, a lot of this is what we're trying to do is because we make our own dog food. And it's important to, at least try to grow some of that to cut down the cost. And I, just think this stuff's really important, guys. And I really think this is where we should all be going. And we're only going to keep expanding. I'm just trying to hopefully get you guys motivated to do it yourselves in any way you can, whether that's one small little garden on the edge of your apartment building, balcony, growing some cilantro or onions or whatever. It's the small things, guys, one little step. And it's the idea, like we talk about, where you go, well, they already have all of our information. Why even try? It's like, that's the last thing you should do, even if that is true. Right? Once, and in this case, that just means is one more thing you can eat that's healthy, and not that all the better for you. So hopefully that didn't waste too much time. I just wanted you guys to see that. And I am proud of it, but I think that this will help motivate others to do the same kind of thing. Now, I want to start with the COVID-19 shot point, because like we titled today, there's a new shot that came out. Now, Sasha Latipova made this case, which I think is important to follow up on, because this is, I think, part of the same conversation, or rather deception. She wrote, "Eugenics for Dummies. Until yesterday, I still had hope for the integrity of at least some individuals in the HHS. Unfortunately, I had to give up on the hope that the video was posted after this post was posted on X." And that's HHS, RFK Jr., and the rest endorsing the COVID shot. Not for everybody. Yes, they walked it back for some areas, but it is still being recommended for some people and is still being used. And that's the line we've drawn on this. That's deadly, dangerous. And RFK doesn't agree with that, as he said every moment up until he got into power. Regardless of what you think about that, as I said, it's still a small incremental objective step away from the problem. But the problem is that we still know these things are deadly. And as we now see more shots rolling out, it seems to be a little bit of a sidestep. But Sasha Latipova rightly found out they didn't even actually do that. At least not yet. And that's why I said I was going to give it a few days. And so here we are. Okay. So as we can tell, as she's pointing out, that on the schedule right now that everyone does still look to, it does not say what they're claiming. Maybe it will happen tomorrow, but maybe not. And it's worth being critical right now because of all the other things that we continue to see where we're being lied to. There's plenty more that she goes into on this thread, but let me show you what she's highlighting here. So this is the actual schedule. So you can still see very clearly that there is a COVID-19 shot, and it just simply says see notes. So if you click on the notes, here's what it says. And you can look down every part of this under routine vaccinations for COVID-19. It says age 19 and older who are not moderately or severely immunocompromised. 1-2 doses for unvaccinated, right there. There's no caveat to say, well, if you're unhealthy or if you're, healthy, you don't need it. That's not there. Now, yes, they did publicly say to some degree that, but where's the actual change? This is the schedule they're referencing. So that's pretty upsetting. But maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after that, maybe it takes longer. Maybe it's going to be a couple of weeks until they update the website, which would be ridiculous to me, quite frankly, but maybe. And when that happens, then we could point to it and say, oh, good, it did happen. Right now, if you're saying that it's happened, it hasn't. It's like them floating, we're about to do something. As far as I'm concerned, it didn't actually happen, which is really upsetting because I hope that there will be some positive change in this. Now, Mary Talley Bowden wrote, and this is, think about this, in regard to, first, the shot still being recommended in any way, let alone not being put off the way they said. Secondarily, that new shots are rolling out that are mRNA. The reality is that mRNA technology remains under-tested, says the comms director, Andrew Nixon from HHS. So you're willing to admit publicly that mRNA technology, which we should know by now, if you watch this platform especially, is not just under-tested. I mean, it's being experimented on us. That's what I think. Either way, yes, that's a fair way to put it. And yet you're still allowing these shots to roll out? You want to make sense of that for me? That's not liberty or freedom, guys. That's insane. And they're framing it under somehow, like if this was a Democrat for the Republicans that pretend like this makes sense, you would be losing your minds. Just be honest about that. Stop being hypocritical about the reality. It's not left and right. It's your government and what they do to you. So what we can see here is insane. And she says, pull the shots. I agree. That's just one example. Now, on top of that, as of today, the FDA approves Moderna's next generation COVID vaccine for adults 65 and older. So regardless, so it's not everybody, but it's 65 and older. It's a shot specifically for the people that need it the least, that are going to get hurt the most by it, the children and the elderly. And it is mRNA, and it will blow your mind that we're still doing the same things. So I simply said the current administration has just approved yet another mRNA COVID shot injection. And as you'll read right here, where is it? There we go. It says earlier phase 1 and phase 2 trials focused on safety, dosing, and immunogenicity, but did not use a placebo, typically involved dose ranging or comparisons to existing vaccines. So we'll go through this. The point is, if you're going to use something to test for safety, the idea of placebo is monumental. And RFK, as I'll show you here, even just made a big thing about this. Plans placebo trial testing for all new vaccines. There shouldn't be anything other than that. That's what our point is. And he agrees. But we're talking saline placebo, and that's when you're doing a safety test. Anything other is manipulation. Now, in regard to, let's say, efficacy, they play this game where they can go, well, we do another vaccine to compare. That's, in my mind, the same insane point. Now, two things to make in this. One, they used another vaccine to do the efficacy testing. And two, apparently there was no placebo test in any case in regard to this new shot. Let me show you. So keeping this in mind, that seems wildly hypocritical, does it not? That he comes out on May 1st and says, placebo trial testing for all new vaccines, and then the next new vaccine that comes out appears to not be in that line. Let me show you. Here is Moderna's page for May 31st. It's called the mRNA spike. That's the official name. Today announced Moderna today announced the FDA has approved, and apparently it was an approval. I looked into that as well. It's not emergency use authorization, but apparently it was the long-term investigation was 2023 until now, the end of 2023 until now. So even that, which is much longer than the extremely ridiculous COVID-19 timeframe, but it's also much shorter than everyone's before that. So if we know that it took, well, as they say, years to test these things before mRNA, then mRNA came out and it's more dangerous and more untested, and then they roll this out and it's done within a couple of years. That feels wrong, guys. That's not reality. This should be at least as much as they were testing before. So let's understand that truncated time frame as much as longer. Think of it like we just talked about, right? So they roll out a ridiculous thing where they're saying, give us 2 weeks, we pump out a new one. And we all say no. So they go, okay, let's make it 2 years. Let's make it a couple years. When in reality, it should be longer than that. Or at the very least, these things shouldn't be used at all, is what I think. But the point is, mRNA 1283 is the name of this shot. So it is mRNA. That's very clear. The FDA's approval of mRNA spike is based on the results from a randomized observer blind active controlled phase 3 clinical trial. And it says, which enrolled approximately 11,400 participants under age 12 or older. So we're going to talk about this and what that means. And observer blind, that's the point, is that doesn't have to be a placebo. But my point is that all of these, the shot should not be being used if at some point it was not tested with a placebo in regard to its safety. What it says here is they received either 10 milligrams of mRNA 1283 or 50 of, not milligrams, excuse me, but just, I think that's what, I forget the exact term. I think it was, anyway, the point is 10 of mRNA 1283 and 50 of mRNA 1273. And it says the new tested shot has a 9.3% higher relative vaccine efficacy. Relative. We all know that game. Maybe I should play it again. Compared to the other shot. So right there, the point is, if you're going to try to tell me that this thing is more effective when you're comparing it to something that we know killed people, what are we even talking about? And if you're saying it's 9.3% more effective than something that didn't seem to work, what are we talking about? I mean, these are not my opinions alone, guys. This seems to be broadly what they're even reporting. Where was it? This one here. The public turning away of the COVID-19 vaccine. Majority suspect heart damage. We don't suspect anything. The world is now pretty damn clear on what these things were doing. Even they are beginning to point that out. So that just seems wild to me. Now, going through this to the next part, here's what Grok had to say. So we're seeing this in their own documentation, but in case those think somehow that's not accurate, if you think Grok is somehow more insightful, even though it's wrong half the time, just worth that point for people out there that want to see it. It says, receive full USDA approval for use in, this was the part right here. Was placebo used in the trial? And if so, was it a saline or something else? And it says phase 3 trial did not use a placebo, because it was a randomized observer blind active controlled study comparing the two shots. Participants were assigned to receive either one or the other, with no placebo arm included. The argument being, for some people, that that's not necessary in that kind of overlap. I flatly disagree. I don't think you should be comparing it to another shot that is already disputed. But this says, in regard to the vaccine, have placebo at all. And it says, vaccine did not have a placebo-based trial for phase 3, which we just know, it just established, but it says instead, the trial was a randomized observer blind active control study comparing those two with no placebo arm. Earlier, this is what I was interested in, phase 1 or phase 2 trials, starting in early 2023, also focused on safety, dosing, and immunogenicity, so safety, but did not use a placebo. They typically involved dose ranging or comparisons to existing vaccines, which is what the data shows. So no placebo. I find that insane with what we just talked about. On top of the fact that we know these things are not, to begin with, the one that's being compared to is not something we should be using. Oh, and this was, this is the same thing. This is from Applied Clinical Trials. Data shows the novel vaccine produced an immune response against SARS-CoV-2 greater than Moderna's licensed COVID-19 vaccine. Right. So, I mean, that might as well be nothing. The terrible thing works a little better than the other terrible thing. That doesn't seem like something that would be a good sales pitch for me. Now, it says the randomized observer blind, same point. It simply just says assigned either one shot or the other. So as the public turns away from these shots, just again, recognize, even McCary just told you that half of medical workers were saying no to this thing. Let's not pretend like we don't know very clearly that they know. Everybody sees what this is, like in a majority sense. So that's why we get this. May 21st, FDA expands COVID vaccine warning about health side effects for young males. Yeah, a little too late there, guys. 4 years too late. The idea is that you're expanding it. You're not, this is something that is killing people. That's what the causing all these myocarditis and heart attacks and blood clots, which we know the science has proven. That's not my opinion. And so if you're just going to expand the warning, it's like saying, it's like the same point, expanding the warning label on a bottle of poison. This is a silly thing to do. But the point is, as you're doing that, and then you push out more COVID shots, kind of feels like an illusion, doesn't it? Seeing as how, again, they're rolling out a new COVID-19 shot. Now, Adam Rowland, who, if you remember, we've discussed, we had an interview with him, and he's a trainer in regard to some pretty high-level athletes, and he was discussing what this was doing and his pushback against the whole thing and him getting penalized for it, his job. Now, he says, so everyone that was awake and knew not to get the COVID jab, and he put awake in quotes, you do know RFK Jr. and company have approved a self-replicating mRNA vax quietly in the background while they BS you with lies, and they have stopped the COVID shot for young children and pregnant women. They are doing so, and they are doing it so it doesn't matter if you refuse the shot, they will get you anyway. That's his opinion, but I agree. This is what we already talked about. Arcturus. Now, technically, it's got the name, where was it? So if you see it circulating, I thought I had it highlighted. I think it's right here. Where was that one? Oh, it's right here. It's Kostaive. How do you say that? Right there. Kostaive. Now, this was already approved in the European Union. So this is going around, guys. And this is, for the podcast, a self-amplifying mRNA bird flu injection. Self-amplifying. SAmRNA. And what Dr. Sherry Tenpenny has to say. While they were tinkering around with mRNA shot removal, the self-amplifying RNA shot was fast-tracked and now approved. Even though, by the way, they just floated we yanked the mRNA, or the Moderna shot, right, for $766 million. So everyone, yay, they pulled that one, and then they approved this one, or they rolled these out. This is a manipulation as far as I can tell. At the very least, it's contradictory. And she says, they played us, McCary played us as he smirked at the TV cameras. Will humanity survive? What was the point of this? I'm just glad to see some people have the courage to call this out, regardless of partisanship, guys. So, some other points I want to highlight before we get into everything else. Now, remember, all of this overlaps to the artificial intelligence discussion, Palantir surveillance. So we have health side surveillance, we've got immigration, justification surveillance, and the point today is we've got them collecting all of your data from 1,000 different sources in one centralized database, which is probably already what it's been for a while, but possibly anyway. And all of this coming together in real time. But really quickly, in case you didn't see this, I'm not going to get into the discussion of immigration or specifically the deportation point, but this was a Danish father of 4 who'd been here for a decade plus, who was going to pretty much his last interview to become a citizen, had a green card already, and they claim he had some old paperwork issue from 2015, and they put him in jail, and he's been there ever since. Now, the part that might add to this for those that want to pretend like it's not happening, turns out he's a very clear MAGA Trump supporter. So just if you, and that was my point last time as well, it should matter no matter what. His rights are being violated, whether he's black or brown or white or Muslim, Christian, or Jew, it doesn't matter. The point is, we always knew this would broaden out, and it was already meant to do that. And it's just about, I still wonder whether he was saying something about Israel somewhere. Who knows what was the justification? Either way, they don't want to even double back on this. So as I wrote, the show was called ICE Unjustly Imprisons Danish Data 4. So here's the update There's that show we went in depth. Here's the update from a couple days ago. A Danish green card holder and father of 4 was denied bail. So not only is he in jail right now, based on some old thing for basically no logical reason, but they denied bail on top of it to keep him in jail. Probably because it'll be a bad public publicity for them, but denied bail after being detained by ICE during what was supposed to be, his final citizenship interview. It's in Tennessee. After receiving his green card in 2013, he began the naturalization process, but unknowingly missed a key immigration filing deadline back in 2015. Now, he's had plenty of meetings and engagement ever since then. Around the same time, in 2015, they suffered a stillbirth, lost their child. So maybe they had something going on that justified them missing a piece of paperwork that would be dealt with a different way if we weren't dealing with this massive kind of collapse of our country. I don't know how you want to call it. I mean, the point is, the other circumstance, they would have simply been like, hey, let's discuss this, and you could prove that you are here. I mean, he's here legally. He's going to these meetings. So this seems like a justification, regardless of where it is. Is this seem like one of the most dangerous people they should be going after? Which, if you actually understand it, is not the. I'll go into this in the next show. The data shows you that they're not going after the most dangerous people. They have a few of them sprinkled through it, yeah, but that's not what's happening. And all of these screaming sycophants out there act like they're all rapists and murderers because they just don't care or they don't know any better. On April 15, 2025, after 2015 being the date when the paperwork thing happened, he was detained at his meeting without warning by ICE during the scheduled meeting, and he was later transferred to Louisiana because they know that's more amenable to what they're trying to accomplish. They with Ozturk and the rest. They're just throwing him into a place that is not going to care that they're basically there illegally. Casper was detained for a paperwork miscommunication. That's what they wrote in 2015. And I was sent home with no explanation and no idea where my husband had been transferred. Is that how that should work? Right? Is he now one of these dirty rapist gang members? So it doesn't matter if rights don't matter? Or is he a Trump supporting guy who's white, who's being arrested, and they still swept him away and didn't tell his wife, didn't have a warrant, didn't show anything? Now, yes, the idea that, like, even saying that you took him there, like, these things are, this is the general process that we're in this country. That you can't just whisk somebody away with no justification, no legal. This is Gestapo, guys. What I'm just hoping is this can reach some of those people out there that pretend because they don't want to look that this already isn't happening. At a court hearing on May 28th, an immigration judge agreed to reopen his case, but somehow still denied him bond, meaning he must remain in detention until they figure this out. Probably like an El Salvador overlap, they drag their feet for the next year. Casper has been a vocal Trump supporter on social media, often pushing, as they write, debunked election fraud theories and calling him to impeach Joe Biden. So regardless of how they frame that, recognize the point is he's somebody who'd be standing right next to you, cheering for the same things you are, and he's currently in prison. Who knows how long, because they just decided to do that because they had an opportunity to get one more person they can call an immigrant off the streets. And right now, on paperwork, they're screaming another illegal immigrant. They're doing it everywhere. Arresting people that were allowed in this country by the previous administration and saying they're all illegal immigrants because you don't agree with Biden's policies. No, they decided to trust our government, and that was the biggest mistake of their lives, despite the fact that they have no reason to assume they're going to be double-crossed by the same government. And they're illegal aliens, and all these screaming idiots like Loomer called them all a bunch of terrorist rapists, that they shouldn't have children. That's the world that we're living in right now, despite the fact that you can prove the vast majority of them have no criminal record and most were here legally. I can say that 100 times over and prove it 15 times, and yet we still have to debate it every time. Just understanding how important that is. Now, we're going to come back to that in the next show. One last point on this. DC Drano says it's time to start arresting CEOs who knowingly hire illegal aliens. Oh, I said breaking news. DC Drano calls for the arrest of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Or should we assume he didn't mean all CEOs? I think we know which way that falls. But here's the clip in case you forgot.
Getting laid on it as well.
And we're going to work with people so that if they go out in a nice way and go back to their country, we're going to work with them right from the beginning on trying to get them back in legally. Is that right? So it gives you real incentive. Otherwise, they never come back. They'll never be allowed once a certain period of time goes by, which is probably going to be 60 days. We're also going to work with farmers that if they have strong recommendations for their farms for certain people, we're going to let them stay in for a while and work with the farmers and then come back and go through a process, a legal process. But we have to take care of our farmers and hotels and various places where they need the people.
Right. So just in case you forget, illegal aliens, that's not, you watch the full thing. If you need more context, that's what they're discussing. And that's what they're talking about. Because the whole thing is about letting them leave and come back and say, well, if they get a letter from the farmer, and I'm sure that doesn't mean any farmer or any hotel or any golf course, right? But they can say, well, they're the good illegal aliens and we'll let them stay while we process this out. Okay. So if you're going to make a big line in the sand about the ones that allow it, maybe the CEO of the country might matter, or in any of his businesses that still allow that. The people like DC Drano wouldn't even care. They're hypocrites. They simply make the case to make a personal immigration racist argument, and that is how a lot of people view the world. It matters if it's a certain kind, and that's where, like, it's just incredible to me that people can be so blind. But again, my point is, I don't think he's missing this. I think he just is he's playing the game like his Epstein binder.
And we're going to be working with you very carefully on that. So a farmer will come in with a letter concerning certain people saying they're great, they're working hard.
Yeah.
We're going to...
Or just a farmer who needs the workers, so he'll say that, so they'll say it's okay. Or, you know, this Mar-a-Lago discussions or any number of other people in his immediate circle who say they need him, because that's been the biggest issue. A lot of people on his side have been like, you're going to destroy my business. And so they make allowances. That's how this works, left and right, always. The point, though, is that all of this is not really about the immigration. It's about using that case to justify the immigration focus. So Palantir can start real-time monitoring, in quotes, all of the immigrants, or really who they say they're focusing on, and just watching all of you. Because you realize there's no other way you can do that. They're watching everybody.
Slow it down a little bit for them, and then we're going to ultimately bring them back. They'll go out. They're going to come back.
Right. Okay. So one more point before we get into all of it, which is the overlapping discussion of a foreign influence. Very briefly, because I had not point this out. So first, I just want, in case you missed this, 2 days ago, a U.S. government employee was arrested for attempting to provide classified information to a foreign government. I find it really conspicuous that they just refused to mention what government that was. They make it clear that it was an ally. Have you ever seen an example like this where that was not the first thing they pointed to? Can you imagine if this was any other government they didn't like? Are we going to pretend that if it was Iran, they wouldn't be Iran? I mean, that doesn't have to mean that it's Israel, but it's worth considering. But so what's interesting is the fact that this is just a point I want to make about a general sense, or whether it is Mendez in Egypt, which, by the way, is the same conversation, but any other government, whether it's even the UK or China, the point is this should matter to us. The fact that it is happening is just something to establish as fact. There are people in the government that will work with foreign countries to their benefit at your expense. So the fact that we can't seem to piece that together or allow that to be seen when it comes to Israel is just crazy to me. But keeping this in mind, I want to play you a few things, because I'm not going to go in very deep or really at all after this through the conversation, because I just want you to see how as it pertains to this country. But you need to understand how Israel is playing a role in what they're building, in the technocratic, globalist, New World Order dynamic that's being rolled out in front of us, and they're playing a central role, even with the health side of it, with Pfizer and everything else. So keeping that in mind, first, just to highlight this, so we're going to come back to this in the next show, Mohammed Shihana points out, and this is a very well done thread that is pretty impossible to deny, conclusive evidence of Israel running the very criminal gangs looting aid in Gaza. Just an additional point, not relevant, not much today, other than the fact that they're right now using AI and facial scans and biometric to basically dictate whether people can get aid in Gaza. So it all comes together. But just so you didn't miss that, that is a reality that we've been saying for the entire time. They're the ones arming and dictating these gangs they use to justify, just like they funded Hamas in the same exact way. But the point is, Israel, in that same way, influences whatever they can, however they can, at the expense of everybody. Here's an old clip from the former head of Mossad telling you, admitting that Israel plans for the Americans to die for their wars. Again, was the point. So think about that in the context of what's coming and what they're doing, and ongoing genocide, the possible Iran discussion, or any other number of things, and whether they would overtake something or take advantage of it, or, occupy a foreign government and turn it into something like we're dealing with today. All worth considering.
So, Leslie, there has been a lot of speculation about whether Israel would go it alone, would attack Iran all on its own. What does Mayor Dagan say about that?
Well, he thinks it's a mistake generally to make it an Israeli-Iranian issue. It should be an international issue. Somehow the Saudis should be encouraged to speak up and pressure the United States. And what he really would like to happen is Israel sits back and the Americans do it for the Israelis. It would then be internationalized. He knows that Israel will be attacked, whoever does it, but they'll be attacked less. And what he's most worried about is the retaliation.
And that's just a casual conversation on corporate media going back some, decade. The point is that this has been roundly shown with their own leaks that they laugh about how easy it is to influence the U.S. government using the partisanship. That's not my opinion. That's what they've said many times over. And yet we still can't get past that in this country. So as Simon Godek points out, I don't care what party they're in. If they protect Epstein's child abusers or help bury the blackmail, they're complicit. No, that could be about Israel or the United States. I won't bite my tongue just because the cover-up crew is now made up of beloved MAGA politicians. F them all. Loyalty doesn't excuse corruption, right? The point here, be more like Simon. Recognize that it's ridiculous to take partisan sides. Team sport politics is just kindergarten level. Now, one more point, if you want to see the kind of fake discussion we're having, a kind of person that would flaunt the idea of American-made anything and then find out that that's in a Thailand-made suit. Things like that. It's the fake person. That's everywhere. And these are really Zionists when you break it down. So it should make you wonder whether or not the whole fake push is actually being put forward by something else. And then lastly, Google VO3 and the flow. It says the future of AI filmmaking is here. We talked about that. And he goes, weird. A couple days later, FBI will soon release video that proves Epstein was not murdered. Just AI overlap where it's going. Deep fakes. We'll see how that plays out. And an interview I had with Charlie Robinson about all of that, Epstein, Bongino, and the embarrassing nature of all of that. So let's get to the crux of the point. So now Elon Musk, back into Biden's administration, clearly was working on the same dynamic, whether he knew it or not, which I think he did, which is the AI satellite network. Now, it's not just spying. Starlink, if you remember the actual image down here, is insane to watch how fast they'll do it really quickly. This is October 19th. You jump forward all the way to right now. That's the reality now. That's November 2023. It's probably worse now. Those, majority of those are Starlink satellites. The amount of control that gives somebody is shocking, staggering. I don't even know if we fully fathom what it means. So under Biden, so apparently he was a deep state pedophile contractor until he suddenly wasn't anymore, or however you want to pretend that works out. The point is, for the U.S. government, Elon Musk was a contractor under Biden, and then he continued under Donald Trump, because it's just one government, guys. And it was entitled, You Can't Hide. As the National Reconnaissance Office points out, that they're building this, now you can't hide because you're constantly being looked at. Now, how do you think they can do that without AI? They can't. And his point in this discussion is that Elon Musk was helping him build out the AI that would make this all work. Okay, jump forward. Musk is now fleeing the Trump administration, as 21st Century Wire writes, after Doge failure, white genocide hoax, X meltdown. That's how they're framing it. I agree in an interesting way. Now, the two ways to look at this. Either he is inconvenient for the establishment or the agenda because he just failed at what he was doing and he made it too hated, bombastic. I don't know. And so they're pushing him away because the agenda has to succeed. Or maybe he was maybe this was the way it was supposed to go. So Elon Musk rolls out this ridiculous version, right? And then they push him aside and you go, hey, no, he's out of the way. Now we're going to do it a little bit less Musk style. And people accept it. Worth considering. But now it is interesting to highlight that he has now sort of pulled away, at least on the surface. This was May 28th. Musk says Trump's big bill undermines Doge. I don't know. To me, that felt a little bit fake. I just seemed like a really strange thing to say, unless there really is a little bit of a feud between them, which you can decide. That's not even the point today. But he said that you're undermining what I did, even though he really didn't do that much. If you understand the true narrative, not the things they're screaming about. Judge spares Trump. This is on the 28th. Spares Trump from massive Doge lawsuit, leaving Elon Musk holding the bag for the unauthorized role. That's pretty interesting. And we'll go into this more as we go into future shows. But he says Donald Trump has been dropped from a lawsuit. So Trump has been overlooked, accused his administration of illegally wielding power to slash government agencies and purge the federal workforce. But a federal judge won't let Elon Musk escape. So is he supposed to be the scapegoat? Was he used all along? I mean, these are all interesting thoughts. Let's not forget that Elon Musk, a lot of people argue he was just sort of a puppet, that he's not even really running these companies, that he's sort of a stand-in. Maybe he was meant to be the scapegoat. I don't think so. That's not what rings true for me. But weird to see how this has been developing. And now beyond that, this is the 28th as well. Musk's role leading Doge qualifies as continuing and permanent. So the judge ultimately rules that because of the way this was set up, you can't just be like, I'm done now, because there's not official anything. There was no real confirmation. There was nothing, right? So they just said it's an advisory role. So for him just to step aside, they're going, well, that's not how that works. You're still technically there as a person. You still have his ear. You're still influential. So that never stopped. There's no official beginning. There's no official end. It's an interesting point. And so they're simply saying that you have influence over it still. And I think he does. And what they're saying, though, is that means he's still liable for whatever lawsuits may come. And that's what that builds into. And it simply says the judge in the federal court found that Musk's reach extends throughout the executive branch without any known limits. That's pretty obvious if you're being objective, even though the White House had tried to minimize his role, framing him as a mere advisor without formal authority. She wrote that the 14 states made a credible argument. There's 14 states that are suing them, that the tech billionaire and Trump megadonor now occupies a continuing position and exercises significant authority, all without proper appointment. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny. All of that is interesting to see how this may build. Now, a judge says Musk may face lawsuit over his role. And then as of 29th, Musk officially leaves the administration. At least that's what they're stating. Again, since there's no official confirmation, it's just words. And it says the White House officially confirms. Oh, wait, was that? Yeah, it doesn't matter. I think there's only one thing in there. And then this is just an interesting addition. I don't know if you saw these. This only adds to whether or not you think that he may be just a stand-in. Maybe maybe this is all meant to give you a certain impression. But I do find this pretty strange. As Elon Musk recently was caught on video yet again, I think in the White House as of yesterday or today, doing one of these.
It's a very sad case. It's a case we win. We can't lose that case because we have the right to make grants. We're not going to make any grants like that. But I don't think Harvard's been acting very nicely. I think Columbia wants to get to the bottom of the problem. They've acted very well. And there are other institutions, too, that are acting, but Harvard's trying to be a big shot. And all that happens is every 3 days we find another 100.
And now he's got a black eye, which, who knows, stories or his kid gave it to him or whatever. I mean, unless there's more evidence, it's all assumption. The point, though, is that he's doing that weird thing, and then here's the one from before. So this one makes that one much more relevant because you could argue the first one was his back or something. I mean, frankly, these are minor points that don't even really mean that much other than to wonder whether this guy is on drugs and whether that would be whether that would imply something, that he's not as serious as he thought, or maybe he wasn't really making decisions. Either way, he's been publicly stating he takes ketamine and ecstasy and all sorts of things. But the other question somebody brought up, which is why I really wanted to include this. Interestingly, the thought being, and this is just like sake of conversation, what if he is testing out his own stuff? What if he's doing what if he's like Neuralink and he's like real-time grok in his head? It's just like, that's, as much as that seems outlandish, it's really not that crazy when you think about where we are right now. Just worth considering. So all that's to say, important notes to keep in your mind as the building continues, the conversation. So that the original push, and then we come over to the overlap of Musk and AI before the selection. Remember, just quickly, that DARPA had an XAI program. It was literally called XAI. Okay, that ended right before Musk took over Twitter. Musk takes over Twitter, that supposedly ends, and then he starts XAI. Okay, that's the process, and we discussed that here. The quiet transition from DARPA's XAI to Elon's XAI. Then, of course, we have BlackRock putting in billions into XAI, which should be a big deal when apparently it's not. And then X sold XAI. Or that's all a bunch of narrative and it was always one military program, right? I mean, that's what a lot of us is always worried. The point, though, is this overlaps with Palantir, as we're going to get to, but it's the building of this rationale and AI basically being this central part of your social media, Twitter file. I mean, everything they're rolling out, everything. And then, of course, you have Musk XAI joining TWG Global, Palantir, for AI push in financial sector. So the question is, were they always in line? And was this just the building of the rationale for why they are on the same page? It's worth considering. Either way you look at that, the point is how centralized and connected this all becomes. So starting with this in that regard, this is from today. Has Big Brother arrived? Inside the secretive Trump effort to centralize government data on millions of Americans. Now, again, if you're willing to dismiss the question, especially corporate media, especially mainstream alternative media, question everything is the point. But that doesn't mean blindly ignore because it's a side you don't like. That is more ignorant than pretty much anything else. There's so many people out there that will go, oh, it's a partisan, New York Times, CNN. I have the same reaction for Fox News or Newsmax or anything else. They're all partisan, ridiculous, but you still consider what they have to say. So in this case, what they're going to highlight here for you is 100% true. I can prove all of it. But there are slants and considerations that they put, and I think that's what you should be worried about. But the point should be, you should wonder, why are they pointing it out? It's not always simply because it's left versus right. Frankly, that's almost never the case as far as I can tell. Look back through history. The point is, do they want you looking at this or not? And clearly they're pointing to it, right? So then what is the conversation? Is this supposed to be what you react to? So they roll out something different? All right. Is this supposed to normalize you with this? Or is it like one thing I see happening a lot? I think a lot of people right now, even on the left side of this conversation, are very resistant to just corporate media right now because of all we've been through. So when they come out and say bad thing, especially on the right, the response is, well, then probably good because they're bad. It seems pretty binary and basic reverse psychology, but it does work. Now it says the Trump administration is reportedly leaning on an Elon Musk allied tech company to build wide-ranging data tools. Close that. Wide-ranging data tools pooling government information on millions of Americans and immigrants alike. The campaign has raised alarms from critics that the company could be furthering Musk's Doge effort to vacuum up and potentially weaponize or sell mass amounts of sensitive personal data. And they mean the sell part we'll come back to. Don't forget. I mean, the White House, as of May 14th, scraps plans to block data brokers from selling your sensitive data. Not just your data, but your sensitive data. That's important, guys. That's a personal background, not just what you looked at online, but your personal sensitive information. Why was that not a gigantic story? Why didn't the left come up in arms and go, Trump is doing it? Some of them pointed to it, but it wasn't really the left side of Congress caring because they're all the same thing, all, in my opinion, generally in the same direction, whether they even know it or not. The people that are pulling their strings are driving you in the same direction. But continuing, it says the campaign has raised alarms. They could be furthering that point, selling sensitive data, mass amounts of sensitive personal data, particularly against vulnerable groups, immigrants, political dissidents. In March, the president signed an executive order just dedicated to, quote, stopping waste, fraud, and abuse by eliminating information silos. See how this works? So they gave you, and that's the efficiency movement. That's technocracy. That's what this all roots back to. Derek's been screaming this for a long time. The point is they say, well, we want to make it more efficient for you. So you think, oh, we're going to fight the deep state and cut off the Democrat spending, and they come in and jam all your information into one location. That's the silos were important because they kept these things independent. There wasn't one centralized choke point where they could just get hacked and lose it all, and all of your information would be gone. That's ridiculous. And so the only reason they need to do that is because they're collecting it all, and they're not hiding this, guys. They're using your personal information, just like Elon admitted to using XAI and Twitter to train their AI models. They're using your personal data. They're using everything. And that's the data they need. They covet that over anything because it's the final step for really, they argue, for fully training these large language models. So he's saying that they're using all of that data. And in March, they signed an executive order to argue they did that to make it more efficient. But in doing so, eliminated the information silos that kept that from being possible, or from the hack from being possible, or rather the much less likely. A euphemism for pooling vast stores of data on Americans under the federal government. Why do we think the federal government has, this is the continual, call it mission creep for government, where we shouldn't have a federal government to begin with, as far as I'm concerned, and rationalized by military or foreign policy. And every single day they get one, and now it's just everyone else is restricting the freedom of the executive power. It's like this exact backward way we should be thinking about this. And it says, to carry out the data effort, the administration's deepened the federal government's long-standing partnership with Palantir, a tech firm specializing in building big data applications. Now, I was speaking with a family member before the show and pointing out, oh my God, look at all these contracts. The government's, it's incredible. And the point is, one, we've been talking about that for a very long time, but also recognizing recently even, we did a show going through U.S. spending. And remember this right in the beginning. And we went through and showed you all the Palantir contracts. I'm going, look at all and that was on top of the older ones, the earlier ones that Trump's initiated since taking power again. And they were massive, $100 million contracts and even more. His point is to recognize that this stuff needs to matter before it becomes a partisan focal point, right? That's the biggest issue today is they seem, and then the question becomes from my perspective is once it becomes a focal point of the partisan game, is it already too late? Usually that's the case. So it just behooves everybody out there to be caring about this, to look at these things beyond a partisan lens. Otherwise, they use them against you. And it says a tech firm specializing in building big data applications, which was co-founded by J.D. Vance, mentor Peter Thiel. Since Trump took office, the administration has reportedly spent more than $113 million with Palantir through new and existing contracts. And that's just since he took office again. While the company is slated to begin work on a new $795 million deal, almost $1 billion with the Defense Department. That's on top of everything else, guys. We might as well be living under a Palantir government, but this is we'll get to the worry of this might well be an AI government kind of push test run. Maybe it's already happening. The idea is, again, is these things should not be scoffed off like that's crazy. We have to be real about where we are and how many things that were moments ago ridiculous are suddenly now like literally wrapped around you, like in your pocket, like it's happening in front of us to the degree that we didn't even know it was there. Like it's always like that. So whether or not this might already be happening is usually how this goes in the past. And so worrying about whether this, like my point was whether Doge itself was literally the run of some kind of AI government. Now it says the department, Palantir is reportedly working with the administration and the Pentagon, the Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the IRS. It's more than that, by the way, but it's already on the surface, or under that it's more. On the surface, they're already building more elements of that. But just that alone, think about a tech company that is literally helping commit a genocide right now, who was basically immersed in the Pentagon, the Homeland Security Department, ICE, and IRS. Guys, they could do anything with that information. Information is power. It has been for a long time. And that is more important than anything else in the world. And they have all of it. Within these agencies, the firm is reportedly building tools to track the movement of migrants in real time and streamline all tax data. Now, in real time, that means if they're tracking migrants in real time, that means they're tracking everybody. How do they know who are migrants? And this is what we told you. This is the COVID-19 pharmacovigilance narrative oracle, which is now being used for Stargate. It's all just this building surveillance network under a new guise, whatever moment they need to use. The company is also reportedly in talks about deploying its technology at the Social Security Administration and the Department of Education, both of which have been targets of Doge. So you can't miss that overlap, guys. Like these are the same things. So Doge was a mirage meant to rationalize what we're doing here, or what they're doing. I think that's pretty clear at this point. And which store sensitive information about Americans' identities and finances. Right now, when I say mirage, realize there were actions taking place. The point is, it wasn't ever about reducing spending. Frankly, we can see we're spending more, and that's unless you're trying to, the point is, if you're going to now go, well, it's because of X, Y, and Z. Fine. And the point was never about that I knew why it would or wouldn't happen, is that we argue, I didn't know for sure, but that wasn't going to be the path because governments want to continue spending. And here we are. But you gobbled up whatever narrative they spun and went along with every step. And now you're arguing why more spending is okay. Well, now we're on the same page, but except we're somehow wrong. It's the partisanship that eats logic, guys. It's everywhere. Now, he goes on to say the Trump administration has reportedly pursued a variety of efforts to use big data to support its priorities, including social media surveillance of immigrants to detect alleged pro-terror views. Now, apparently, as we'll get into probably tomorrow or the next show, they're refusing visas for people because they don't have social media accounts. Which again, I'll be the first to say that they're not required to give visas to anybody, as far as I can tell. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But the point is, that's not why they're doing that. The idea of it's all about surveillance and invasive control, and that's just one of the reasons. Like we can see with the MAGA guy currently in prison. But it goes on to say, including Social Security surveillance, or then it says, and American activists who disagree with Donald Trump's views, which is happening. Earlier this month, a group of former Palantir employees warned in an open letter that the company was normalizing authoritarianism under the guise of a revolution led by oligarchs. We talked about that. Their own employees are literally they're pretending that they're on your side. They're pretending they're libertarians, so you all fall for it. And they're rolling out authoritarianism. It's just insane how clear it's always been. And it's partisanship that has let this happen. Quote, they are trying to amass a huge amount of data, according to a senior DHS official speaking to the magazine. Quote, it has nothing to do with, it was Wired they're speaking with, it has nothing to do with finding fraud or wasteful spending. They are already cross-referencing immigration with Social Security Administration and IRS, as well as voter data. It's just, I can't believe anybody's allowed this to happen. Since Trump took office, Doge operatives, many of whom are unknown to the public nor have been vetted, which is also crazy, have rapidly sought access to data at key agencies, including Department of Education and the Treasury, as well as Social Security Administration, often over the objections of senior staff. Now, let's not forget the Israel influence, guys. For all we know, this literally is Israel or a foreign government, whatever makes you make sense for you, the possibility that is. And I'll include, even though I wasn't going to, the point that needs to constantly be made around this is all these people we're discussing who have access to all these things, many of which never signed ethics pledges, that whether about conflicts of interest or really ethics showing you who they might be attached to, or maybe, as the person said, maybe foreign governments are working through them right now because they never did that. And nobody ever called it out. Not in earnest, anyway. Did I read that last part? Let me see. Oh, no, I went too far. Where were we? So right here, it says they are trying to amass huge amounts of data. Since Trump took office, Doge operatives, many of whom are unknown. I did read that. Okay. Making sure we were done. So this is just the first part from Independent. But so the idea simply is that you can very clearly see what's being amassed. Like they're rolling this out. They're building this in front of you. So I want people to think about the larger picture, at least from the AI perspective, because that's central. I mean, if there's one thing we can all see, whether it's health, foreign policy, AI is the thing right now. It's everywhere, which they've been telling you. And so wondering whether about when it's coming or if it's already happened, the impending future of AI government. Not governance, but government, like actually having some kind of a central artificial intelligence that's dictating policy and guiding people, if not controlling. But the point is, but who controls the AI? Maybe nobody. Maybe Israel, maybe China, maybe the United States. The point is who? And that's the biggest issue because one, if it is AI, like an actual general intelligence, well, that would be something different, seeing as how that would be sentient or whatever's possible, if you believe that's even possible. On the other side of it, it would be the lie. Claiming there's an AI running things when really it's them pulling the strings. And either way, very concerning. So keeping this in mind, let's overlap this with the point about the possibility of this. As we said before, and this is an article from February 25th. Who is Amy Gleason? The person named Doge's acting administrator by the White House. This weird overlap that I would still like more information about this, whether this person even exists. And if she does, what is she involved in? What is she doing? If she's supposed to be the administrator of Doge, show me one example where she had any say, influence, signed anything. I don't think it happened. So it's really weird, right? So maybe it could be a cover for Elon Musk. That's certainly possible. Now, David Icke pointed this out. This is on May 13th, pointing to this article. Trump fires head of U.S. Copyright Office, stoking fears about deregulation of AI. May 13th. So again, my mindset is the Palantir database has been building this entire time, but pointing out is that it builds up to this point to where it's officially sort of acknowledged, right? So May 13th before that, David Icke says, are you getting it yet? It's an AI coup. Head of U.S. Copyright Office, Shira Perlmutter, fired by Trump after simply report questioning Musk and the AI cabal getting access for free to copyrighted material to train their AI. 2 days earlier, the White House fired Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, the official responsible for overseeing the Copyright Office, and who appointed Perlmutter. Quote, it says, it's no coincidence that Trump acted less than a day after Perlmutter refused to rubber stamp Elon Musk's efforts to mine troves of copyrighted work to train AI models. You see, not hypothetically, but that's what they were doing. They were trying to access information that was not theirs to train their models, and they said, you're not supposed to do that, and they fired him. So if you can't recognize that that's everywhere, that they're just freely accessing everything that's supposed to be private. I mean, it's everywhere you look. And he says, fears, it's happening before our eyes as the cult AI control system goes into overdrive under Trump, as he says he's long said it would. He's right. So 7C's pointed this out, and this is an important part of this. Let's not forget that this happened right before this acknowledgement. Republicans introduce a budget reconciliation bill that gives AI powers to Howard Lutnick and prohibits states from regulating AI for a decade. You already know this. He does a really great thread on this if you want to go through it in depth. I'm just going to show you some of the parts of the bill itself. This is the bill. I thought I did. Oh, I guess I forgot to download this one. I did the other one. I usually put them on my server, so if they get deleted, you guys can still save it. I'll try to remember to do that. But so this is the bill. You can read through it. Here's a couple parts that stand out to me. Except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subversion. Here, let's do this. so you can see it in real time, just in case. Except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce any law or regulation regulating artificial intelligence models. Like, again, I'm actually, why I said this with Charlie Robinson. I can't believe anybody let this happen unless you recognize that they're all absolutely on the same page. No regulation of any company working with AI for 10 years. I mean, that's I can't, for any topic, that seems insane. Yet, let alone what is supposed to completely revolutionize, if not destroy, our entire lifestyle, our world, our freedom, our privacy, who knows, our liberty, especially with what we can see with Palantir or whatever else we're dealing with. Are any of them people we want having that much control? Oracle, Larry Ellison, ChatGPT, Sam Altman, XAI, Elon Musk, the U.S. government, Palantir, Israel. I mean, for crying out loud, I just can't wrap my mind around how that's possible unless everybody's on the same page. Said no political subdivision thereof may enforce any law or regulation regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems. So AI, that's what it says in here. AI basically dictating decisions. That's what it says. And that's during a 10-year period after this date, after this act. That's now, basically. So that's weirdly how interesting. And now suddenly they're going, Palantir database. Well, too late now, apparently. Can't regulate it. Goes on to say, paragraph 1 may not be construed to prohibit the enforcement of any law or regulation that the primary purpose and effect of which is to remove legal impediments to or facilitate the development or operation of an artificial intelligence model, artificial intelligence system, or automated decision system. The primary purpose and effect of which is to streamline licensing, permitting, routing, zoning, procurement, or reporting procedures in a manner that facilitates the adoption of artificial intelligence models, intelligence systems, or automated decision systems, and does not impose any substantive design, performance, data handling, documentation, civil liability, taxation, fee, or other requirement on artificial intelligence models, or the systems, or the automated. So you can't do anything. Like, as the guy pointed out in a recent video, feels very similar to the Vaccine Act, right? And now they're using AI to make vaccines. So it might as well just be that. I mean, maybe that's all it is. I doubt it, but if that makes it make more sense to you, they're just extending out the same game where they can do whatever they want with these injections and there's nobody that can be held accountable. And then this one. To replace, and this says this repeatedly about a lot of different things, to replace or modernize within the Department of Commerce legacy business systems with state-of-the-art commercial artificial intelligence systems and automated decision systems. The Secretary of Commerce shall use the funds appropriated for the following. I mean, they're not even hiding this, guys. They're literally automating governmental departments. So what if that's, I mean, how do you not see that eventually going into all of it? Or maybe that's already the case, and these are simply the extension of that. So either way you think about this, the idea that you can say within 10 years there's no oversight as you roll out government AI, I mean, this is just insane. You guys are literally going to, I mean, I can make jokes about this, Skynet or whatever. It's just like every possible worst thing is in this next 10-year period because they just, I mean, I don't even know how to frame this without being hyperbolic. You know why it's the reason I'm failing for words? Because it's endless. The amount of possibilities, the amount of ways this could go insane, it could go wrong, could destroy, it's endless. With oversight, well, let alone with no oversight from anybody, with the most powerful technocrats, billionaires, and genociders running an AI control system for the next 10 years with no oversight. I don't know how that makes sense to anybody. Now, let's not forget, actually, it was April something, I forgot. Oh, April 8th. Weirdly enough, Marjorie Taylor Greene decided to buy Palantir stock. Now, maybe it means nothing. Maybe she just decided we got lucky because she saw it was built. And let's be clear, everybody saw this was building, but the timing does seem interesting. And not a lot of others did the same. Now, I just quickly looked and it turns out that, surprise, James Comer purchased Palantir stock in January. Gilbert Ray did the same. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene. Democrats and Republicans, which I do think is relevant. So here's the New York Times article, continuing off from the same conversation from The Independent. This was yesterday. In March, President Trump signed an executive order calling for the federal government to share data across agencies, raising questions over whether he might compile a master list of personal information, clearly that's happening, on Americans that could give him untold surveillance power. Mr. Trump has not publicly talked about the effort since, but behind the scenes, officials have quietly put technology building blocks into place to enable his plan. In particular, they have turned to one company, Palantir, the data analyst and technology firm. The Trump administration has expanded Palantir's work across the federal government in recent months. The company has received, as we just reported, more than $113 million in federal contract spending since he took office, according to public records, including additional funds from existing contracts as well as new contracts with the Department of Homeland Security and the Pentagon. In parentheses, this does not include so in addition to that, another $795 million contract with the Department of Defense was awarded just last week. So as we're talking about slashing spending, here's a casual $1 billion for what most of us don't want. The push has put a key Palantir product, and this is where I find this first relevant part. Every part of this is relevant and concerning to me, but this whole push has put a key Palantir project called Foundry into at least 4 federal agencies. So that's not even mentioned in most of these articles. Foundry being the thing that is being centralized into all of these, if not the centralization in all of it, including Department of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, widely adopting Foundry, which organizes and analyzes data, paves the way for Mr. Trump to easily merge information from different agencies, the government officials said. Creating detailed portraits of Americans based on government data is not just a pipe dream, they write. The Trump administration has already sought access to hundreds of data points on citizens and others through government databases, including their bank account numbers, the amount of their student debt, their medical claims, and any disability status. Now you realize this is more detailed. This is not just we're scooping this together to find immigrants. The government is actively finding. They're looking. It's like the war on terror, and they said we're going to be focusing on back. No, they turned that in and looked right at you. They looked right at us. It was always pointed at us. We have always been their biggest worry. And so right now what we're seeing is that they're claiming all this stuff and they're scooping up data on you because that's always been the case. It's not Trump. It's your government. He's just the newest example. Palantir's selection as a chief vendor for the project was driven by Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, according to government officials. That's super important. So the reason Palantir was brought in for this is because Doge and Musk drove that into reality. No, or at least that's what's being framed. So back to the point of whether Musk might be the scapegoat, that may be the reason, the thread they lay so he gets pointed to. But my gut tells me that this was all laid into place very carefully. I can't help but consider the Israeli influence on this, and maybe that's why this is all placed there, as every one of these people are screaming Zionists. They're blindly anti-American when you really look at what they're doing. But it says at least 3 Doge members formerly worked at Palantir. And you look at the list of people in his cabinet that worked for Palantir or associated with Peter Thiel. We showed you in the beginning of the show. It's mind-boggling. Actually, there's a tweet we're going to show you that has even more, I think. Where was that? We'll come back to it. I think it's further down. It's actually wild to see how many people, but at least 3 of Doge members worked for Palantir, while 2 others had worked at companies funded by Peter Thiel. Even mathematically, that seems unlikely, but it says an investor and founder in Palantir. This month, 13 former employees, and we'll show you this next, signed a letter urging Palantir to stop its endeavors with Donald Trump. Linda Zia, somebody who was a Palantir engineer until last year, said the problem was not with the company's technology, but with how the Trump administration intended to use it. That's a philosophical difference, or really just it's both, in my opinion. The technology itself is designed in a way that seems weaponized. But it says data that is collected for one reason should not be repurposed for other uses. Combining all that data, even with the noblest of intentions, significantly increases the risk of misuse. Well, that's obvious. So even if you want to pretend like they're doing this for the right reasons, that's the point that we've always been making. Regardless, you shouldn't be doing that. It is guaranteed to be abused, whether it's him or the next person. Palantir, of course, declined to comment, which always seems suspicious to me with something like this, when they're acting like they're doing good for everybody and they're like, no comment. Or the White House, no comment. That seems very strange to me. I mean, why wouldn't they come out and be like, yeah, it's great, we're saving everybody? You know, it seems very weird. But it goes on to say, Palantir has long worked with the federal government. Its government contracts span the Defense Department, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. See, I mean, it's everywhere. During the pandemic, the illusion therein, the Biden administration signed a contract with Palantir to manage the distribution of vaccines through the CDC. So, okay, so does that make Palantir a pedophile deep state the game? Like, look, I'm not trying to diminish the reality of those very things in the government. The problem is that partisanship seems to allot them to one side and only selectively. It's not the case. My point is, if you're going to act like this is some deep state thing, then why did Palantir work with the deep state and why does Trump work with them now? It's all of your government, guys. And the point is that they're working with the government. Nothing has changed. And it goes on to say, at the IRS, Palantir engineers joined in April to use Foundry to organize data gathered on American taxpayers. 2 government officials said this. Their work began as a way to create a single searchable database for the IRS, but has since expanded. They said Palantir is in talks for a permanent contract with the IRS, Department of Homeland Security, State Department, CDC, IRS, ICE. I mean, what are we missing here, guys? I mean, this seems to be every major database in this country. Well, guess what? That's the point. It says $30 million contract that ICE signed with Palantir in April to build a platform to track migrant movements in real time. Same point. The only way that's possible is if they're tracking everybody and then doing their best to differentiate, or maybe not. Goes on to say the goal of uniting data on Americans has been quietly discussed by Palantir engineers, employees said, adding that they were worried about collecting so much sensitive information in one place. That's always been the logic, guys. Maybe that's why they're doing it, so somebody outside of this has easy access to everything they want. The company's security practices are only as good as the people using them, they said. They characterized some DOGE employees as sloppy on security, which has not followed protocols in how personal devices were used. We know that. That's been proven, in fact. They've even had hacks since they started doing this. And this is the employees from Palantir saying this. So you have to ask, why would they be that sloppy? Was that in the interest of hurting this country or because they wanted somebody else to have access or something else? Please ask these questions, guys, because I'm not trying to focus on one thing. That's what makes most sense to me, but we don't know for sure. But we have to ask these questions because that doesn't add up. So going over some of these points, here is Foundry, is what Grok had to say. Is Israel involved with Palantir's Foundry project? And we've talked about this in the past. Israel is involved with Foundry. While specific details about the use of Foundry in Israel are limited, Palantir has confirmed its use in the region, Foundry in particular, with a dedicated Foundry access link based in Israel under the codename Ether. This suggests that the Israeli entities, potentially including government or military operations, are utilizing the Foundry platform for data integration and analysis. Source material here, we've talked about this in the past. The reality is this is important to understand the overlap between the two, including to this extent of using their AI to kill people in Gaza. A strategic partnership. We've seen Lavender, Hapsora. These are real-time AI killing machines. Now, the dispute, for example, with Lavender is whether or not that's actually Palantir. Now, the point is to understand. I believe this is exactly what we're talking about. Regardless, the point is Palantir's working with Israel in this exact regard, using their AI for battle tech. So it's kind of ridiculous to pretend like that's not what that is. But even if it's not, they're helping them build that out then because they're helping them build this exact thing out. It's just obvious. So when that was January 2024, this is the entity that's collecting all of the information on you. And we know that Israel has weaponized this information for decades, and they're using it against people right this moment, including Americans. So doesn't that concern people in the MAGA movement? It should. So next point, WikiLeaks, as we read in the article, the open letter released by 13 former Palantir employees is damning. Not for anything it says, but for everything it doesn't. And the way they title this based on, they're using the nod to the Palantir, which is from the Lord of the Rings series, The Scouring of the Shire, a letter from concerned Palantir alumni to tech workers of Silicon Valley. And here's it's on my website in case this goes away. And you can read this for yourself. I mean, the bottom line is that it's highlighting what we just went through. The use of this data for personal resource, at the expense of the people's data. Like this is not what these people are calling out the use of this tech in the ways that they always thought this company was not allowing or not allowed to do, or that they had principles that they maintain. That's not the biggest point. is they go, we're not, actually, like she said, it's not about whether which I disagree with, the data is, basically used in a noble way, it's okay, but the way they're using it is wrong. Like, I don't think this centralized data collection should exist at all. The point is that what these people are saying who are part of Palantir are that what they're doing today under Trump's administration is wrong, and it is dangerous. It's important to understand that they're involved. And it's also interesting that back on April 17th, this video came out from More Perfect Union. I worked at Palantir, it says. The tech company is reshaping reality. That's what it says. It's everywhere you look that people inside of it, people in the government who are resigning in protest, or whatever the conversation, it's everywhere. What we're telling you is the writing's on the wall. It's right in front of us. This should not be something we're okay with. Hackable Animal points this out. Fannie Mae. And my point is, this is in every angle of our lives right now. This is because it's taking over. Now, I don't mean that could mean in a real sense, or it could mean that they're just employing this or deploying it everywhere. But that's Fannie Mae announced a new AI partnership with Palantir to help root out mortgage fraud, or just more access to more data is really what I think it is. And as Hackable Animal says, CIA Palantir is being injected into everything, both public and private. If you want to understand what they are building, you need to study Technocracy Inc., Tech Energy Certificate, and the Technical Alliances Energy Survey. They are the basis for the CBDC and social credit system. And again, we'll reference Derek's amazing work on, basically entitled Welcome to the Palantir World Order. April 24th. Now, Ian Smith called this out. Now, if I remember correctly, he was a Trump supporter and then kind of disillusioned by what's going on because he has principles, it seems. He says Donald Trump just handed Palantir the contract to build the federal AI database, which will be the single most dangerous consolidation of power in modern American history. Completely agree, if not already. Palantir isn't a tech company. It's a surveillance machine born inside the CIA, funded through In-Q-Tel and run by Peter Thiel, a billionaire data oligarch who openly brags about crushing right-wing populist movements in Europe with his software. Now he's here, building the backbone of American AI, pretending to be a libertarian, because that worked with some people. This is the same Peter Thiel who groomed J.D. Vance, shapes national AI policymaker as an unelected power broker, pretends to be anti-woke while embedding Palantir across every global intelligence agency, and Trump, the guy who ran on the drain in the swamp, just handed him the keys. You are watching a merger of big tech, big government, and artificial intelligence, branded as patriotism. And so the point with that is it's maybe it was under our idea during Biden is somehow woke, or before that about fighting terrorism, or it's whatever the narrative is, whatever they get you most passionately focused on. In this case, the fighting the deep state as patriots, pushing back against the control structure, and using that to convince you that you fighting the system is happening, as opposed to you building it out for them. They're not creating tools, he writes. They're building infrastructure for digital authoritarianism. Palantir has already been used for pre-crime arrests, and as Whitney's covered, and pandemic lockdown enforcement. You'd think that would be enough for specifically the Republicans. And now it's being given access to national databases under the flag of security. This isn't the Patriot Act 2.0. This is Revelation 13 in real time. I mean, you could argue Patriot Act 2.0. His point is that it's much, much bigger than that. He causes all to receive a mark. No man might buy or sell save he that had the mark of the beast, the point. Now, whatever you think about the overlap to that, the point I always make from an Israeli perspective, end times, is whether they believe that. It's important to think about. And they're very clearly pointing. I mean, people like Besant or Waltz or any number, most of his cabinet are religious Zionists, like whether Christian or Jewish, biblical Zionists. Like, they think end times is here and that's what's coming. And by the way, that means to destroy the West so that comes on. That's the belief. So people that are in Trump's administration screaming America first are of the mind that this has to be destroyed before that can become. Think about that. It says an AI assigning you a risk score. First he said, you think the mark will look like a chip? It'll look like this. The AI assigning you a risk score, a predictive model determining your access to banking, travel, medicine, a tech priesthood deciding who's dangerous, and Trump is funding it. Palantir is the digital beast system. Thiel is the architect, and conservatives are sleepwalking into their own captivity, cheering as their anti-establishment hero turns the surveillance state into machine learning monster. This isn't freedom. It's a Babylon binary. Interesting. I think that'll reach people. I hope it does. James Lee simply says, interesting how the same company tracking terrorists abroad is now tracking us at home, starting to feel like they are the enemy. Now, obviously, he's been aware of this for a long time, framing it to reach new people. Trump tapped Palantir to create master database on every American. Nicholas Fuentes says, Trump's promotion of Palantir is the ultimate betrayal of his own people, feeding every MAGA extremist, in quotes, into the AI database controlled by a CIA Mossad cutout. Seriously? If Palantir isn't the deep state, then what is? That's a very good point to consider. And I'll include the, oops, that wasn't right. There it is. This is based on a Strategic Culture Foundation article, basically arguing that what Doge was doing is that not just the deep state, and same point. So the deep Doge state is what I called it. Very much worth reading, understanding now that it seems to be all of it together. High Impact Flick says, this is serious. Trump's partnership with Palantir Technologies aims to implement a March 2025 executive order mandating federal agencies to share data, your data. Very simply put, that's what that means. My point is, it's already happened. This is them normalizing the reality of it. He writes, this initiative has one goal: centralize all government data, leveraging Palantir's Foundry platform that Israel's involved in. Palantir's Foundry platform is able to merge vast data sets. He says, we're talking bank accounts, medical records, driving record, student debt, disability status, political affiliation, credit card expenditures, online purchases and activities, tax filings, travel records, phone records. That's what this is really about. So when Palantir being just a data thing, no, they're a technology entity that was been built in a way in order to collect this for the building of AI. And it says, if you don't think this will lead to unchecked monitoring and zero oversight, you need your head examined. Now, I'm arguing for the build of AI. That's what I think it is. But, the point is just the way that they're collecting all of this. He says, it says, we're talking about threatening freedom and ending your life as you know it. That's not even hyperbolic, guys. And he says, this is light years beyond Real ID, Patriot Act, and PRISM. This is a centralized, comprehensive, authoritarian surveillance and control grid, and those who control it desire to have complete power over you and everyone else. So just for a brief aside, it's right. It's, for me, when they rolled out Stargate in like the first week, I'm just like, that's got to be the end of this, right? There's no way. Maha in particular, but Republicans second are going to take that at all. And sure, I was wrong, apparently, at least for the team sports screaming partisans. Didn't matter. It's a good thing because Trump did it. Okay. Well, so the point is that now here we are, barely not even in the first year, and they're rolling out the control grid. That's what Catherine's been calling out. Like, in particular, the digital control grid. How long has she been pointing that? And here we are, as they're literally rolling this out. Now, you can still argue it's for your benefit or it's him fighting the deep state. Maybe. But it's a little bit alarming to not consider that it could be the very thing you think you're fighting. And it's exactly what we told you. Like, the point is, for those now arguing it's them fighting deep state or it's the good thing, those were the same people that said we were wrong this was going to happen before the selection process. Called us black-pilled and purity test and whatever else. This is what we were telling you was coming. Look back. I'm not making this up. You can look at what we were talking about like weeks, months, years before this, but we were telling you this is what was coming. And again, of course, to make this easier, the White House's scrap plans to block data brokers like Palantir from selling your personal data. So now they're going to use that and sell it to the highest bidder, anybody they want. And that's okay, apparently. Now, to wrap this up toward the end, or rather, excuse me, not the end, but the previous to this, right? Seeing how this is built through Biden's administration, through Trump's administration, and this goes back to Trump's administration, through Biden's administration, into Trump, and even before that. Hear it again. This is not unique to Trump. It's not partisan, guys. They're using partisanship to get you to miss this. So this is back to 2017. Wired, how Peter Thiel's secretive data company pushed into policing. Why do you think that is? Jumping now, May 2025. Police across the U.S. are now adopting new AI surveillance. Are we okay with that? Is that what we all want? I mean, aren't we all pushing back on what China has and all of a sudden Trump's rolling it out? Now, again, it's not unique to him, but the people need to hear that because they think he's saving you from it. This is what's happening. We have the overlap of Doge infiltration into core of federal biometrics management, setting off alarms. It's every single angle of this. And as far as I'm concerned, Doge and XXAI and Palantir, and it's all the same conversation. I mean, I could be wrong on that and whether they're competing or it's going to end up in the same way. But think about it from the point that I think ultimately, if you can at least consider that these are all scattered data points of the same agenda, like consider that they're all literally the same thing, fighting in the same path. And if they keep you thinking they're independent, oh, here's ChatGPT, over here's XAI, over there's Palantir, then you don't see the full picture. Now, at least consider that they're all the same thing. Now, I don't mean literally the same thing, but in the same, like they're all on the same team working for the same objective. Worth considering. Now, Derek also wrote May 2nd, Palantir partners with NATO on controversial AI project Maven. Now, this is where it gets wild to me, and this overlaps with this, or actually, where was that? This one. Come back to that in a second. But so Palantir for a global sense with NATO to show you, and then think about the you can't hide database with Starlink. Like this is not just about the US. Right now, that's the starting point. But guys, this is a global surveillance network is what they're building out. Project Maven, we've talked about in the past. Here's from the Palantir's website. Palantir expands Maven's smart system AI capabilities to military services. Palantir, and this was on the 20th, was it, that was on, I think it was April, actually. But it says Palantir Technologies today announced a contract awarded by the DevCom Army Research Laboratory, expanding Maven smart system access across the military services to include the Army, Air Force, Space Force, Navy, U.S. Corps. So if you just got outraged by watching how much Palantir has immersed itself in every other data point, recognize they already locked in the military side of this a long time ago. And this is just we just talked about the $765 million contract for the Defense Department. This is on top of that. This is a smart AI system with drones and whatever else. I mean, like, can we not at least consider, like, let's think of like the data choke point and why it's dangerous to have it all in one spot. For the same reason, it's insanely dangerous to allow one entity this much control. I mean, even if you think that, like, maybe not even Trump or Elon, maybe it's Peter Thiel that's going to take advantage of all this, or maybe it's Israel through him. The bottom line is, if you have this much power and you can basically shut down, control, delete everything in one location, or control all of the military through the AI you're rolling out, we could be watching a massive artificial intelligence coup taking place, or any number of ways to look at it. I also think it's interesting how, of all people in the world, you have the current, conservative background to this that's currently supporting Trump, who are the most usually on guard to any conversation about a coup, a regime change, and now the markings are everywhere. And I guess because you're winning, it doesn't seem to be there. But it says rapidly adopting the strongest AI capabilities to enable warfighters around the globe. Palantir's platform will support AI-enabled battle space awareness, global integration, force management, contested logistics, joint fires, and targeting workflows. Military, killing people. That's what it's all about. And overlapping that, Zoe Smith interview, COVID surveillance, Palantir, and the transition to total information awareness. Now, one of the most alarming things we talk about in this, and Zoe's really great work. By the way, I still want to publish her writings on TLAV. I just haven't gotten around to it. They're on the Substack right now. But we talk about, why did I not have the, I'll have to make a note of that. I guess I forgot to put the tags on there. We discuss in this interview, which you should check out, the overlapping idea of whether this could end up being used for drones. Well, it already is, but from like a health perspective, but the point is potentially using them for assassinations, for targeting, any number of things. And weirdly enough, at the same time, we saw an overlap with like the NSO, Pegasus, WhatsApp thing, and people in Yemen and having their phone locations being used for a targeted attack. This is growing in an alarming way. And so with the Maven overlap with Palantir, how long until we're under that kind of technocratic surveillance panopticon control where you do the wrong thing, you just disappear? I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, guys. This is where this all goes. And that's why we talked about the Great Palantir Reset on April 21st. Talking about the idea of not the Great Reset as we see it through some kind of woke lens, left-leaning dynamic, but from whatever works. And now Palantir. And realize, again, Palantir was working the last time. You just didn't see them front and center. Now it is the Great Reset, the reimagining, the Build Back Better right in front of you through Palantir and everything else. Now, don't forget, it's not just one place. It's global. The UK government publishes controversial NIH COVID-19 contracts with Palantir. Yeah, it's all around, guys. And we also saw the building, again, this is through 404, leak Palantir's plan to help ICE deport people. That's how it started. Then it turned out they were literally using that to roll out, which I argued was already happening, Immigration OS. So that's one side of this. My point is just showing you all these different data points, all these articles you can read through. We've gone over all this in past shows. And here's the helping Doge with massive IRS data project. See, at each time, these were one thing, right? Where they were like, oh, that's okay. They're just helping make the IRS more efficient. Hopefully now you can stand back. And even if that was at least one thing they were doing, which clearly they didn't, if you're being objective, stand back and look at the big picture. Justification, narrative, rationale. And what are they doing? Scooping up data from the IRS, from the DHS, from the State Department, from the IRS, from the ICE, from everything, and jamming it into one database to watch you. Oh, yeah. And let's not forget that they're also rolling out the medical database that RFK Jr. is rolling out through HHS, which, as we showed you last time, made the same point. Where was it? That they will be using data sources. Where was it? There it is. Medication records, pharmacy chains, lab testing, genomic data. They're saying they're going to be using data from your smartwatches, your fitness trackers, all linked together, all for your benefit, of course. Now, one was about autism and another one was about just general health. They're building medical databases. Now, it's the same conversation. Now, if you're looking at this, it's not verifiable whether Palantir is a part of that, but there's a lot of overlapping information where it's suggesting that Palantir is, in fact, what's being used here. But that's for another conversation. It's just simply the continual database store collection, centralization of your data in every possible facet. Former Palantir executive tapped to lead data security at RFK Jr.'s health department. Well, there you go. Now, that doesn't prove that Palantir is working the database that he's building, but what it shows you is Palantir is immersed in every part of this conversation and now has access to it at the very least. Now, this is the one I was talking about earlier. Trade Whisperer simply shows you Palantir and their empire is powerful as F, he says. Here's a full list. Now, it's not the full list, but there's some on here that we didn't mention in the articles that Derek did. Clark Miner, a 13-year-old Palantir veteran, weird, is now RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services Chief Financial Officer. This is the, which guy was that? Which one was that? Now, he's worked with Palantir for that long. I forget. Anyway, there's something about that. I got to circle back to that. So RFK Jr.'s Health and Human Services Chief Information Officer. Didn't we just read something on that? Something's connecting in my mind right now on that guy. Clark Miner. Give me a note in the chat if you think that, am I missing something there? Gregory Barbarcia, Palantir's former head of intelligence and investigations, hired as the federal chief information officer. Jacob Hellberg, senior advisor to Palantir, was appointed Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth. Are we kidding? Like, this is insane. Sham Shanker, Palantir Chief Technology Officer, is reportedly being considered for a high-level Pentagon job. Anthony Jansko, George Cooper, and one of the other engineers have been associated with Doge recruitment effort, and they are former Palantir forward-deployed engineers. Peter Thiel, of course, obvious, but it goes on and on and on. And you can read Derek's articles about the acolytes in the administration, the different connections. It is wild. More obvious than even Citibank and Obama. But the point is, it's the same kind of thing. Now, at the same time, as he's talking about the medical database, don't forget considerations for use of artificial intelligence. Why? For making drugs, mRNA injections. This is AI-created drugs. Not a new conversation, but we always knew it was coming here, and they're using your data to execute it. And I guarantee you, most everybody's not okay with this right now for a million reasons. That's Stargate, if you forgot. Stargate is quite literally an AI program. Here's the clip of him saying that.
We gene sequence, once we gene sequence that cancer tumor, you can then vaccinate the person, design a vaccine for every individual person to vaccinate them against that cancer.
Yeah, or that's what they say, right? And what they do is get in very invasive biometric personal data, right? And that's sort of like the orb and Sam Altman, you know, the whole world coin thing that they're still pushing, which is insane to me. I just really want you to think about that and whether or not what we're discussing here is just another push to get even more invasive, personalized information in real time. At the same, regardless, it is a mRNA platform, AI-driven medical database, which is what Republicans more than anybody were calling out during Biden's administration, or just in the past COVID-19 push.
And you can make that vaccine, that mRNA vaccine, you can make that robotically, again using AI, in about 48 hours. So imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Well, there it is. That's exactly what they're rolling out. As Derek wrote, Stargate, Trump partners with technocrats to promote mRNA injections, AI, and transhumanism. Yep, there's Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, Oracle, right, which was the pharmacovigilance database during COVID-19 that we've apparently never got to really see because it proves that they killed everybody. And that was data they were scooping up from the very beginning. They're supposed to go on for 2 years, they told us. And they promised they wouldn't use it this way, and here we are. Or SoftBank, which is essentially Israel's funding arm for their Unit 8200 dynamic. I mean, it's all very documented. And he's leading the financial side of this. So very clear what's going on to me. Now, again, Brooke Jackson called this out earlier, just saying, I call for an immediate suspension of any regulatory authorizations or approvals that relied on AI processed data. And we should. And that's not the same as AI created drugs, but the point is it's used in every process here, every facet of what they're doing. And she sees where this is going. She knows better than anybody. Also, in case you thought it was unique to just certain sides of this, no, even the EPA. Explain how that makes sense to me. Trump's EPA has a new mission, making the U.S. the capital for AI. Okay, why does EPA have anything to do with that? And of course, reviving the auto industry. Okay, it says they're doing all this under the guise of efficiency, but what they are really doing is dismantling the agency from doing its job. That's the Intercept, by the way. No, to me, the EPA is it's gone. It doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. It is a captured agency like the FDA, like plenty of others. The point, though, is that you're now using it in a way that pushes. I mean, he's come out in weird ways to push weird things from the beginning. The Environmental Protection Agency is talking about AI for car. I mean, it just shows you that they're so hyper-focused, like they've lost the plot, in my opinion, or that they just need this to be all-encompassing, which is pretty clear to me. Now, I'll end with this point about this again. If you already know they built out this satellite network that's being used and AI is being initiated for that to function, that's just the global beginning steps of where this is it's coming into fruition in front of you. That's been built out. You can't hide, is what the National Reconnaissance Office guy said about what they're building, because they have eyes everywhere. That's where we are now. Let's not forget that his Starlink push is also very conspicuous around this, because the Starlink is a central part of how this all works. And then recognize that whether it's just this or multifaceted, one part of the immigration conversation, one part of the South Africa conversation was about this. The Trump administration leans on African countries. The goal, to get Starlink in these countries. That's what it was about, Starlink. And so if they say no, which they did because they're resistant to this administration and they're calling out Israel's genocide, they suddenly manufacture a false narrative of genocide happening for white people in South Africa. Not to say that there's not racially motivated violence. Very clear. No one should deny that. Hardly a genocide by any metric, especially since they're denying this genocide in Gaza based on the metrics and then saying what's happening here. And don't forget, we even saw the really embarrassing thing where XAI admitted that Elon altered it to say that. In public conversation, Fortune did an article about it. Crazy. Here's another one, by the way. May 7th, U.S. pushes nations facing tariffs to approve Starlink. Different point, same conversation. This was them saying, well, if you take the Starlink, you wouldn't have any tariff issues there. So maybe it was all literally about building out this AI network, and that's what a lot of us have been saying. Now, even for myself, I've never said that's the only thing, because I think I'm very easy to see that even if that's the central thing, every underling has their own personal agenda. Israel wants something different than what, they're all vying for something. And then that was not to imply that Israel's an underling, but just simply people in every facet have their own directions on top of what the main thing is. But you have to, especially with what we just went through today, you can't miss that every action they've taken has been in part for this agenda. This agenda is transparent now. I mean, from the arguments of Europe to what he's pushing back on Venezuela, I mean, everything he's done has led to this point, at least in part. You can't miss that. And then I just mentioned this recently with Charlie. This is the kind of stuff that worries me, but we're rapidly going beyond, like right now we're at a point where this is already happening. I think what this is referencing, and it says leak reveals what Sam Altman and Joni Ives are cooking up, 100 million AI companion devices. If you read about it, it's simply saying things that basically track you, follow you in your pocket or however else it works, maybe some other implantation. That's not even hyperbolic. It's literally what this conversation is about, but it's something that just monitors. It's unobtrusive, just is there all the time. Reason I'm mentioning this is that I think, as it says, and they're not XR glasses, you see, it's something beyond that. I am worried that what this will take the form of is kids. Remember when you were in school, at least my generation, where Apple computers were the thing and they got you playing, Oregon Trail and it was the newest thing, or Ants or whatever it was. And a lot of people got pulled into that. And it doesn't seem as nefarious then because we use computers today, but it's the same kind of ideas, getting you to go in the direction that they want you to. So what if they rolled these out in schools as Trump is normalizing this and overtaking the Department of Education? And all of a sudden they say, okay, well, we need AI bots to follow along the students and help keep them on track. You know how many people would support that right now? And then we're done. I mean, at that point, then you have the newest generation being locked in at AI everywhere all the time. I really worry about what this is right here. In general, the idea of AI companions for anybody will do the same thing, but the kid discussion of it is usually where they strike. Something about that feels like something my gut tells me that's where that's going to go. So keep an eye on it. Let's see where this goes. My worry in general is the normalization of this, or rather get us to a point to where we feel like your phone, that you can't live without it. That feels like where they're going with this, with Grok and all the rest of it, where you get to a point where people think, well, I need that. That's how I get X, Y, and Z. That's how I efficiently do this. Go back to using a map, guys. Stop being pulled into it, myself included. We have to stop allowing this to take over because that's exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Now, I'm not going to get into this in depth today, but I had to include it. There's a much bigger part of this that we're not really getting into, and that's the physical representation of the technocratic agenda. Okay, we've talked about the idea of the technocratic regime change that happened in Honduras under the guy, it's called Prospera, under the guise of a libertarian, utopia, which is it's not even libertarian, hardly a utopia. And Peter Thiel funds this. Elon Musk provides Starlink. The U.S. regime change in 2009, very easy to publicly look up, is why they were allowed to do this. They overthrew the government. Then the new person, they then removed judges so they could vote the thing in that they wanted, allow them to do this. They've revoked that sense with the new government, but they didn't leave. And now the new government literally just said recently they're going to try to overthrow them again. This is a technocratic regime change. They're even absorbing new parts of the area. It's also happening in other places of the world. We've already heard these conversations floated. I think El Salvador, in its own way, is the same thing. The point is, you might have seen this. Elon Musk wins vote to establish his own city in Starbase, Texas. This is, in my opinion, part of the same conversation. And what's weird about this? This is from 2 days ago. Musk's SpaceX town in Texas warns residents they may lose the right to continue using their property. Yeah. That's where that's what's, I think it's called Crawfish Rock in Honduras, is dealing with that. I just think it's important to see where we're going with this. And if we're talking about AI government, technocratic control, like literal, under the guise, what's funny is this is your 15-minute city, or you're at another flavor. It is the same idea. And that's what they're proposing for even Gaza. Trump says he wants the U.S. to take Gaza and turn it into a freedom zone. It just couldn't be more clear, if you really stand back and connect the dots, that all of this stuff is interconnected, and they're rationalizing and driving you into this central place because it'll be easier to control. It's crazy enough. I genuinely think that most people, as I do with most of these, are actually pretty aware of this, but don't know what else to do. So I don't have all the answers. My job first and foremost is to make sure that you see the problem, that you can articulate it, you have the information to realize it, so then you can formulate the solutions that you think is best for your life. First and foremost, don't fall into these traps. Stop using the tools they're providing. Call these things out and make sure the world sees that you're resistant to this path. Maybe that'll be enough in momentum to at least slow it down. But my God, I sadly think that what they're doing right now is beyond partisan influence. So we need to make this clear to people, especially on the partisan sides, that what's happening is not in the interest of Americans. It is an invasive surveillance and occupation, and in real sense, in my opinion. But just help me call this out, because I see more people every day beginning to recognize this. And in history, what we've learned from it is that when there's enough momentum, they do tend to pull things back, almost always come back from another angle. But that would at least give us more time to try to shift the direction. Thank you for tuning in and continue to support the work that we're doing. I mean, again, I think today is a good example of the demonstrated value of this platform. If you've been watching this platform, you knew about this a decade ago. I mean, legitimately. And there's a lot of other things like that we've talked about. Like, what's funny is I was thinking about mentioning this the other day. It's interesting how we have a reputation, and I'm proud of that we're one of the most important during COVID-19, and, we're breaking this stuff down before a lot of people were. But what's interesting is if you became aware of this platform during COVID-19, you might find it interesting to go back and look at things before that. We were that right about things before COVID-19, around Yemen, around Israel, around foreign policy, around countless things, regime changes happening in the world. And it's not because we were special or guessing. It's because we cared, we looked, we did the due diligence, we referenced it, we looked at all sources, considered all the possibilities, and showed you what we thought was the most logical outcome. And often enough, that turns out to be the case. At least arms you with the tools to be able to be ahead of a story, not in a partisan way, not in a mainstream way, but because, but in a fact-based way. It's crazy, I know. But take a look back at the website. Look at the information, the work we've done, going back a decade or more, well before COVID-19, and you'll find that we were wildly ahead of a lot of stories. And that's not trying to pat myself on the back. I'm trying to demonstrate the value of why this platform is worth your time. And if more than that, if you think it's worth your time, it's worth your donation. That's how we survive in this completely manipulated world that we live in today. So thank you for being here. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.